Shame he's not as talented in bed as you described. That's the line that did it. Not the laughter that followed. That hyena pack eruption of fake tan and whiter-than-white veneers. Not the way she covered her face like some bashful teenager who'd just been complimented on prom night. Not even the way her boss winked at her afterward, smug and satisfied like a man who'd just marked his territory. No, it was the precision of it. Because that wasn't a guess. That wasn't a drunk improv. That was a direct quote. One I remembered from a fight we had 7 months ago. The message arrived encrypted. The subject line was cold, clinical, almost surgical. Personal breach, confirmed. Begin phase 1. No one on the team needed more than that. Protocol dictated silence, speed, and separation. By the time the office lights dimmed at Weston Industries, a manager at a third-party analytics firm in Manhattan had rerouted dormant access credentials into a ghost audit queue. A compliance officer in Chicago flagged Weston's leadership matrix for anomaly detection. No names, no specifics, just a quiet flicker of red on the internal risk radar, the kind that never makes it into monthly reports unless someone wants it to. And someone did. She never knew what I did with my time. The first time she handed me Weston's internal documents, it wasn't framed as betrayal. She needed help. That's what she called it. Just help me tidy this language. You're good at legal-sounding stuff. Her division was prepping for an internal audit, and her boss didn't care about policy wording. It was boilerplate, she said. Nobody reads this crap anyway. But I do, and I always have. So I poured over the files. Every clause. Every section of their HR and ethics handbook that looked like it had been copy-pasted from a dusty template last touched in 2009. I revised them. Quietly. Anonymously. Without credit. Clause 5.2. Interpersonal relationships that create a perception of favoritism or conflict of interest must be disclosed to the Ethics Committee within 10 business days. Clause 7.1. Any managerial oversight of individuals with whom the manager has a personal relationship is prohibited unless written exceptions are filed and approved. Clause 9.3. Retaliation or preemptive isolation of employees suspected of whistleblowing will trigger an immediate third-party review. I wrote that, and I saved it. Because it wasn't just policy, it was insurance. She'd printed the final version from my old laptop, the one I used more for chess puzzles and dusty coding scripts than anything else. She didn't know it auto-backed every document she opened. So when she clicked the PDF, scrolled to the signature section, and plugged in her wireless mouse to sign off, it was all recorded. That backup folder, buried under an innocuous file name, Retirement Home Options _2019, held copies of every draft, every change, including metadata. And here's the thing about metadata. It doesn't care what story you tell. It just tells the truth. Fast forward to last week. I was in the garage under the excuse of sorting old boxes. She was inside on a loud Zoom call. Something about brand strategy and client alignment. I had her work laptop open on the trunk of my car. Its screen timed out, but not locked. Her mistake. In the 10 minutes she left it unattended, I didn't need passwords. I just needed the cached emails. One in particular stood out. Subject: after last night, winking face. Still thinking about what you said. Can't stop comparing. It's funny how small he seems now. In every way. No name. But the timestamp was right after their company retreat. The same week she came home with a Weston-branded duffel bag and claimed her boss had upgraded her to a suite because of her years of loyalty. Right. Another email, less flirtatious, more concerning. Subject: board presentation draft. Remove any language about external authorship on the ethics section. Keep it internal. If asked, just say we rewrote in-house. She had no idea she was covering her tracks over mine. So I started assembling the folder. Not for drama. Not for revenge. For leverage. Screenshots. The video made its rounds faster than her excuses ever could. A junior staffer, probably half a decade out of undergrad and still dumb enough to think funny HR violations were good TikTok fodder, had recorded the toast. Not out of malice. Just that same old millennial instinct. If it's cringe, film it. Post it. Laugh later. He titled it, "When the Boss Toasts Your Coworker's Husband, and It Gets Too Real." The clip was only 22 seconds long. Enough to catch the smirk. The quote. The entire table erupting. Her face buried in her hands while her boss leaned back, triumphant, like a king after a beheading. It was shared in a private Slack channel, then reposted on a burner Instagram. From there, it hit one group chat with a Weston recruiter in it, who didn't laugh. They flagged it, just in case, to an HR generalist. By 9:47 the next morning, it was forwarded, without context, to the VP of Risk and Compliance. By noon, Weston's internal legal team had a copy of the clip. By 3:30 p.m., Phase 2 was activated. The toast, once just a cruel little theater of ego, was now evidence. And not in a tabloid sense. In a legally actionable, policy-breaching, fireable sense. The head of internal risk flagged it for possible exposure due to executive misconduct involving non-disclosed personal relationships. The term was key, non-disclosed, which, conveniently, I'd written policy around years ago. And now, thanks to her neglect and her boss's ego, that policy was being dusted off and highlighted. The risk team dug in deep. They pulled calendar syncs, location data from corporate-issued phones, expense reports with matching timestamps. She had billed a dinner at Vintera, the same restaurant from the video, as a client onboarding strategy session. The receipt? 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, no clients listed, and a room charge to the suite upstairs. The folder on the table was unmarked. No labels, no logo, just matte black cardboard and the kind of weight you can feel even before you open it. The weight of someone else knowing what you swore you'd buried. Her boss didn't sit right away. He hovered, the way men do when they sense the room doesn't belong to them anymore. He cracked a smile meant to downplay whatever this was. So, we doing another culture audit? No one laughed. Across from him sat a woman he'd never seen before. Early 40s. Blazer with no company pin. Not HR. Not legal. Not anyone he could casually intimidate with name-dropping or performance stats. Just a notepad. A pen. A gaze like glass. She flipped open the folder without saying a word. The first page, a screenshot from the dinner video. Frozen mid-toast. His mouth wide open mid-joke. Her face in the background, covered in her hands, laughing. He blinked. She turned the page. Next, a flagged email from his personal account to hers. Subject line, about last night wine glass. The message was simple but stupid, still smiling. You always make me feel like the smartest man in the room, and the best one in bed winking-faced. He chuckled. That weak, defensive chuckle that comes out when your lungs forget how to process panic. What exactly is this about? He asked, voice cracking on this. The woman didn't answer. She simply slid forward the rest of the documents. Hotel invoices misfiled as vendor outreach. Duplicate Uber receipts tied to private dinners. Discrepancies in meeting logs versus badge entries at the company's Manhattan office. Receipts. He looked down, swallowed, and for the first time in his tenure, realized there wasn't going to be a negotiation. Are these supposed to be, what, policy violations? He asked, trying to inject humor. But even he didn't buy the tone. Her silence was answer enough. She didn't need to prove intent. Just pattern. Meanwhile, on the 12th floor, my wife was in a strategy sync when her laptop pinged. Outlook calendar. Subject line. Meeting. HR compliance. 3 p.m. conference room. 2A. No sender listed. No context. She stared at it for 5 long seconds. Said nothing. Then slowly minimized the screen. I knew that look. She'd worn it once before. Years ago, when her debit card got declined at a dinner she'd insisted on paying for. That flash of shame, buried under faux calm. Pretending to be in control while mentally racing through the last 50 things that could have gone wrong. She leaned toward her boss as the meeting ended, fake casual. Hey, I got a weird calendar invite. HR at 3. You know anything about it? He didn't look up from his phone. His voice dropped half an octave, clipped and dry. Don't mention anything. Not to anyone. Then he stood and walked away. Just like that. Her stomach dropped. She didn't know yet what was in motion. Only that whatever this was, he wasn't going to shield her. In the elevator, she messaged a friend in admin. No response. She checked her swipe logs, wondering if she had clocked in late last Thursday. Anything to make it a misunderstanding. But she knew. Deep down, she knew. And worse, she didn't know how much was known. That was the part eating her alive now. It was no longer about an inappropriate toast. It was about proximity, intimacy, the quiet assumption of invulnerability she'd worn like perfume. She thought her secrets were safe because they were whispered between power. What she never realized was that power was already in the room, watching, recording, and now, pulling the strings. She didn't slam the door when she came in that evening. She closed it, slowly, like the sound of it might provoke something she wasn't ready to handle. The keys jingled longer than they should have. Her heels, usually click-clacking down the hallway with executive certainty, barely made a sound. She looked like someone still waiting to exhale. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. Didn't even bother reheating it. Just let it sit there. Let the silence steep. She didn't speak at first. She stood by the counter, hands still clutched around her purse like she didn't know if she should drop it or run. "You're not going to believe what's happening at work," she finally said. Forced casual. Bad acting. Voice pitched just high enough to sound like small talk, but the tremble around her mouth betrayed her. I didn't ask, didn't lean forward, didn't say what happened. I just looked at her and let her squirm in the quiet she'd once filled with endless condescension. She blinked. A beat of hesitation. Then came the performance. "There's this stupid video from that dinner. Someone leaked it. And now HR's doing these weird meetings. People are acting strange. Like something's about to," she broke off. Still waiting for me to play the part. The worried husband. The good listener. The one who always nodded when she vented about the politics at Weston. Instead, I sipped my coffee. Cold. Bitter. Appropriate. She looked confused, like the rhythm she was used to had slipped out from under her feet. "You left so suddenly," she said, more accusation than concern. "Why?" "Because I was done pretending," I replied. Her lips parted slightly, like she didn't understand the language I was speaking. I stood up slowly and walked to the drawer beneath the microwave, pulled out a manila envelope I'd placed there 3 hours ago, right after printing the last document. I handed it to her. She didn't take it right away. "What's this?" "Just some paperwork," I said. "Things you probably forgot you signed." "Things I didn't." She opened it hesitantly. Inside, 6 neatly stacked pages. The first, a copy of a financial severance letter she'd signed years ago when we refinanced the condo. A harmless formality, she'd said back then. "It's just to show we don't commingle assets," she'd told me. "You know, in case something ever happens with my job." The second, a mutual disclosure notice from a consulting draft I helped her with. A line on the bottom in small print. "Any breach of ethics arising from undisclosed relationships with senior leadership voids partner protection and may be disclosed in the interest of transparency." She had initialed it. Back then, she thought it was clever legal fluff to throw off internal policy teams. Now it was a noose. She flipped through the rest in silence. Her breathing got shallow. Her knuckles white. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You will." I walked past her to the sink, rinsed my cup, said nothing. She was staring into the envelope like it might change if she just blinked enough. Finally, she said it. "This isn't what it looks like. My boss, he jokes like that with everyone." I turned slowly, let the sarcasm drip off my voice like molasses. "Oh, so you describe our intimacy life to every executive dinner table? Must be a blast at Q4 reviews." Her face twisted. It wasn't serious. "But it was public," I said, setting the cup down. "And you laughed. Like it was the best thing you'd heard all year." I panicked, she snapped. "It was awkward." "No," I corrected, stepping closer. "It was rehearsed. He didn't just improvise that toast. He knew what to say, because you gave him the lines. You made me the punchline." She fell silent. I handed her the last document. Not from the envelope, but from my jacket. A blank signature form. "Here's how this goes," I said, voice steady. "You can sign this. We file quietly. No lawyers. No headlines. Just 2 people going their separate ways." She stared at it like it was written in a foreign language. "And if I don't?" she asked. I looked her dead in the eye. "Then we do it publicly. You love an audience, right?" She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just looked like she'd suddenly forgotten where the exits were. And I, the man she once described as harmless, boring, safe, was no longer playing the role. The husband she thought she could laugh off at dinners had just changed the script, and she wasn't ready for the next act. It took less than 5 business days for her world to come apart in pieces small enough to vacuum off the carpet. By Tuesday, another executive, one of her old allies in marketing ops, was called into a closed-door meeting. He emerged pale, holding his blazer folded over one arm like he might not need it again. By Wednesday morning, a finance VP abruptly resigned to pursue personal opportunities. "That's corporate for we gave you 10 hours to clean your desk, or we leaked the screenshots." No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. The walls were sweating. She tried to act normal. She really did. Booked a couple of coffee meetings with junior staff, kept her voice a little higher than usual, the faux optimistic tone of a woman who wasn't panicking, just busy. She even cracked a joke in the elevator about HR going full detective this week. The intern didn't laugh. And then Thursday came. Her inbox, which normally pinged with meetings, briefings, and "Are you joining the Zoom?" messages, went silent for hours. At 11:14 a.m., one solitary email slipped through. Subject: change in employment status. Body: you are being placed on temporary administrative leave, effective immediately. Your access credentials will be restricted. Please return your company-issued devices and badge to HR by 1:30 p.m. No greeting. No signature. Just process. She stared at it for a full minute, like her brain couldn't compute what it meant. Then came the realization. Not panic. Not yet. Disbelief. She stood from her desk too fast and knocked over her coffee. It stained a stack of unread pitch decks. Her assistant looked up, confused. Everything okay? She didn't answer. She made the walk down the hallway like a ghost inside her own life. This was the same hallway where she used to swing her keycard like it was a scepter, where interns straightened up as she passed, where she once breezed past HR with a latte in hand and told a nervous new hire, "Relax. This place loves confidence." Now the air didn't even notice her. HR had already packed her things. That was the part that broke her a little. They'd wrapped her office mug in bubble wrap, like she was dead. She didn't fight, didn't demand explanations, didn't storm into legal and threaten to sue. She just took the box, walked out, and no one stopped her, not even to say goodbye. Outside, the rumors had already started fermenting. Someone in internal projects said she'd crossed a line with leadership. A guy in sales asked flatly, "Did she sleep with the boss or something?" Someone else chimed in, "Nah, I heard it was retaliation. Maybe she was the whistleblower and got burned." No one knew for sure, but everyone agreed on one thing. She wasn't coming back. She sat in her car, holding the steering wheel with both hands, like it might anchor her to something. Anything. She didn't turn the engine on, just sat there. The sunlight was too bright. Her phone buzzed. It was a number she hadn't saved, but she knew who it was. The message was simple. I never needed to yell. I just needed the truth to echo. That was it. Not signed. Not time-stamped. Just a sentence that hit her like a freight train. Because she finally understood, this wasn't just an office drama. It wasn't a workplace misunderstanding. It wasn't a bad joke at a dinner party gone viral. It was precision. Orchestration. Someone had been watching, recording, and waiting, not to destroy her, but to reveal her. And now, the echo was loud enough for the whole company to hear. She stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. But what do you write to someone who stayed silent for years, until he made silence your sentence? She never typed a word. Just sat there, the box of her curated executive life on the passenger seat, realizing that for the first time in her carefully manicured existence, she didn't know what came next. And no one was coming to tell her. Desperation makes cowards inventive. By Monday, the Weston board had gone from quiet observation to full surgical mode. They'd seen the toast. They'd seen the receipts. And most importantly, they'd seen the trend, a pattern of misconduct cloaked in charm and brushed off as company culture. And at the center of that storm stood Weston's golden boy, the man who made six-figure clients laugh, who called junior staffers champ, who always knew which intern had allergies before ordering lunch. Now he was hunched over in a glass-walled conference room, tie off, collar open, sweat darkening the underarms of his designer shirt. The same shirt he wore to that dinner, the one he toasted with. Across from him sat the head of internal risk, two board observers, and a quiet woman who'd said less than 20 words all morning but had printed transcripts in front of her that could gut a senator. "So," the risk officer said, steepling his fingers, "let's go over the tone of these messages again." The boss let out a tight breath. "Look, yes, maybe I got too familiar. But she exaggerated things. She liked that attention. I never asked her to share that kind of stuff. That was her decision." He slid a hand through his hair, rehearsed concern smeared across his face like an actor at his final audition. But the documents didn't care. One message, flagged, time-stamped, and authenticated, read, "Tell me what he's like. I need to know how much better I am." Another, "Your marriage sounds dead. I'm just helping you feel alive again." And a third, the nail, "If we ever get caught, I'll say you pursued me. Just in case." He'd typed that last one at 2:14 a.m., the night before her promotion paperwork went through. They read it aloud in the room. He winced. "I was joking," he insisted. No one blinked. The meeting ended in 12 minutes. At the door, the board rep handed him a sealed envelope. Suspension with pay pending review. A kiss of death wrapped in legal courtesy. He walked out past his own assistant, who suddenly couldn't make eye contact. HR had already locked his laptop. Security badges for his entire department were being reissued. Meanwhile, the real shift happened in whispers, hallway conversations with phrases like reputation risk and shareholder optics. The board wasn't just cleaning up. They were preparing to purge. Someone had to be blamed publicly. Someone had to fall harder. He might have been the architect of the culture, but she was the exhibit. The talented executive who rose too fast, Too close, under too few rules. And her signature was everywhere. Her name was on the misfiled reports. Her email address was on the falsified vendor receipts. Her face was in the video. She was the easier scalp to offer. By Wednesday, a private HR brief was circulated to senior leadership. It read, "Investigation expanding scope to include executive growth consultant. Possible violations of clauses 5.2, 7.1, 9.3. She once used those clause numbers to impress interns. Now they were bullets aimed at her resume. She tried texting him, her boss. Can you at least tell them this wasn't one-sided? No reply. She called. Voicemail. On her fifth attempt, the call failed, not declined, not missed. Blocked. He was already rewriting the story. She came on to me. I didn't realize how far she'd take it. I was trying to be supportive, but the texts betrayed him. And worse, they betrayed her, too. Because the investigators weren't stupid. They didn't see one predator and one victim. They saw two people playing a game they thought they'd invented. And now, the entire board wanted closure. Not slow, bureaucratic resolution, closure. And the fastest way to signal reform? Is with a public sacrifice. She just didn't know yet that the knives weren't for him anymore. They were for her. And they were already being sharpened. The boardroom they chose wasn't one of the flashy ones. No skyline backdrop. No glass wall overlooking the city. Just a rectangular room with acoustic ceiling tiles, a long mahogany table, and windows frosted so thoroughly you couldn't even see shadows outside. Decisions made in rooms like this were never meant to be photographed. They were meant to be final. The chairs were full, CFO, chief counsel, 2 external board members, 1 representative from risk, and 1 from HR compliance. Notably absent, her, and the man whose toast started all of this. But there was someone else in the room. A man in his late 50s, calm, neutral expression, dark gray jacket draped casually over the back of his chair. He carried no binder, no laptop, no stack of documents. Just a single notepad and a pen he never uncapped. David, not the husband she thought she knew. Not the man who trimmed hedges on Saturdays and made quiet jokes at barbecues. Not this systems guy she told her coworkers barely understood how LinkedIn worked. This was the version of him built from the years she never asked about. The one who consulted Fortune 500 companies on crisis fallout. The one who specialized in post-scandal reconstruction. The one companies hired when they were ready to admit they had made a mess they couldn't hide. The Weston board sat in tense silence as the general counsel finished summarizing the findings. Misconduct, non-disclosure, potential retaliation attempts, financial misreporting, and significant compliance breaches in leadership. When the room finished its obligatory legal throat clearing, their eyes fell on David. He didn't smile. He didn't soften the blow. He just spoke with that steady, deliberate tone of someone used to being the final voice in the room. Your internal ethics framework failed at the leadership level, he said. You didn't misstep. You didn't overlook. You didn't misunderstand. You failed. Cleanly. Repeatedly. And publicly. One board member bristled. We weren't aware of the... David raised a hand, polite but firm. I'm not here to assign shame. I'm here to tell you what you need to do if you want to restore credibility. We can help rebuild, but only if you're willing to clean house. There it was. No threats. No dramatics. Just an offer. And a warning disguised as professionalism. The board exchanged glances. They all knew what clean house meant. Leadership couldn't just be adjusted. It had to be amputated. No half measures. No quiet reassignments. The decision took 9 minutes. Her boss was terminated effective immediately. Not suspended, not reassigned, not tucked into a consulting role. Fired. For cause. With a formal statement to accompany his exit. Meanwhile, her employment status was updated in the internal system, pending HR review. The kind of wording that meant only one thing. They were saving her for last. They wanted a paper trail. A clean one. The kind that protects the company, not the individual. Her name had moved from a badge on an office door to a bullet point in a liability report. And she didn't even know yet. David never asked for credit, money, or headlines. When the meeting adjourned, he simply stood, slipped his jacket over his shoulder, and walked out through the rear exit, the one used by contractors and people who don't need an audience. No dramatic closing line. No self-satisfaction. Just quiet completion. Outside, the building's glass exterior reflected the clouds. Employees moved in and out of the rotating doors, oblivious to the fact that their company had just reset itself from the top down. And somewhere across the city, she was sitting in her apartment, refreshing her inbox, rehearsing explanations for sins she hadn't fully cataloged yet. By the time she learned her boss was gone, her fate would already be sealed. And David, the man she turned into a dinner joke, was already on his way home, the soft hum of city traffic replacing the last echo of her laughter in that restaurant. The table had turned. Silently. Completely. Finally. The restaurant hadn't changed. Same low lighting. Same overpriced menu printed in gold serif font. Same waitress with the blue streak in her hair and the tattoo she always tried to hide under her sleeve. But the energy? Different. Quieter. Like the place itself remembered what happened. The corner table, their table, sat empty. No reserved sign. No glasses. Just silence. Like even the chairs refused to hold another scene like that one. The staff whispered, of course. Restaurants live on rumor. And last week, that table had gone from a place of promotion celebrations and corporate backpatting to something else entirely. The toast. The laughter. The man who didn't raise his voice, didn't throw a glass, didn't even finish his meal, just folded his napkin and vanished. She hadn't returned since. But her name hung in the air like the scent of something sour. Clients had canceled lunch meetings. A regional director postponed a standing reservation.